you got something for me?
Yeah, there was some guy here from Miles Juergens looking for you. They need sparring partners for Apollo Creed.
Put me on.
Here's the car.
When was they here?
About an hour ago.
They'll probably look for sparring partners for Creed, you know?
I said that before, you dumb dago!
You know, I've been coming in for 6 years, and 6 years you've been sticking it to me. I want to know how come.
You don't want to know.
Yeah, I want to know how come.
You want to know?
I want to know how!
Okay, I'm going to tell you. Because you had the talent to become a good fighter. And instead of that, you became a leg breaker. Some cheap, second-rate loan shark.
It's a living?
It's a waste of life.
Do you expect me to talk?
Good afternoon, good evening and good night, and welcome to episode 68 of Do You Expect Us to Talk? I'm your host Becca, and joining me as always are my wonderful co-hosts Chris and Dave. How are you both doing?
I'm feeling wonderful, thank you.
Are you also wonderful, Dave?
I spoke at the same time, we fucked that up really, but bollocks.
Oh.
Yes, I'm fine.
Should we do that again?
No.
Oh.
No, carry on.
Hell no. This week we are moving on from Superman and jumping into the boxing ring to go the distance as we discuss Rocky, one of the greatest ever sports sagas of all time.
The man who the man who stopped the Cold War. There you are.
He healed hearts and minds as well, Chris. It wasn't just a ceasefire or something.
Yes.
Don't play it down. We were all chums afterwards.
I'm sure when we get there I'll bust out my really bad Ivan Drago impression. But
He doesn't say a lot.
no, she goes, Ivan Drago, and that's it.
That's it. Well, you
just done it
didn't
now.
have to wait.
I've done it now. There it is. Damn it.
Maybe in a few weeks you can get some practice in. How about that?
Yeah.
I'll actually watch the film first. But no, after 30 odd years, I've never seen this series. And now I've seen the first film, so one down.
One down and another 6 to go, is that it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, another 6 to go. So, I'm quite interested to see what Becca thinks of Rocky. Because I'm kind of excited for her, because obviously I know where it's going. And I'm kind of... I imagine Becca kind of knows, like, generally how the series...
I think from here, the only way is down, surely.
Well, no, I think you
And then
kind
up
of,
again.
like, see, like, you basically know, like, the main points out of 4, but I'm kind of just excited to go through, like, the journey with you. You know, like through fresh eyes and just like see like each film as it just like changes like as they go,
Sure.
as it gets like even more like ridiculous and bombastic and then come back down again. It's like so I'm quite actually looking forward to.
It totally follows the arc of Stallone's career and ego. And we can talk about that more as we get into it. But certainly, Stallone talks about, his head getting, very swelled as we got into the 80s. And you can see it in the films. We're looking at a film tonight that was nominated for 10 Oscars. It couldn't have won 10 Oscars because there were a couple in the same category. Burt Young and Burgess Meredith, Phil Mickey, both nominated for Best Supporting Actor. It won Best Picture. It won Best Director. It won Best Editing. It was nominated in a number of other categories. Sylvester Stallone for Best Actor. The aforementioned Supporting Actor, Talia Shire, was nominated for Best Actress. Or Best Supporting, I forget. I think she got the lead actress nod for that. Bill Conti was nominated for Best Score. And Sylvester Stallone was nominated for a script. This comes with a pedigree. And you can argue about its relative merits against the films it was nominated with, because that was a particularly strong year. But it comes with a pedigree. And by the time we get to the 80s, it's not only becoming fairly mindless action and very rote, but it's becoming a sort of fest of bodybuilding as opposed to storytelling. And by the time you get to Rocky IV, that film is just so wrong-headed, it's untrue. It's fun in its way, but when we get there, it's the clumsiest propaganda you'll ever see in your life, because Americans come off looking like piss pots on the basis of that one film. And that's not what was intended, I'm sure. But we'll get there. But we're starting with a Best Picture winner tonight. It's our first on this podcast. And it might be a surprise to people who know Rocky 3 and 4 and maybe a couple of the newer ones to think that was the case. But it was. And it beat out Network, All the President's Men, Taxi Driver. This won in a very, very stacked field.
Was it like the underdog in itself?
I couldn't tell you, to be honest with you. I mean, the film in general is an underdog, and we'll get into that as we go through it, because this is an extraordinarily cheap film. I
wonder if it kind of was in a bit of a way, because I mean, those films that you just listed there, they're all very much, going on with the politics and what was going on in America at the time.
They were much more
films
at the time,
that are kind of very stylistic and obviously had a lot of money spent on them, but also they're also very critical of society and in American politics at the time as well. Whereas this one is completely, I mean, there are kind of undertones from that, as we'll go through in the film. Like Philadelphia's obviously a very famous city, but also we see a part of it which is kind of very poor and downtrodden. But
I mean, certainly when you look at something like Network is still the last film to win 3 acting Oscars in the same year. Mm-hmm. Obviously, one film isn't going to win it in separate years. You take what I mean, though. Peter Finch, who was the first posthumous acting award, the second being Heath Ledger for The Dark Knight. Faye Dunaway won Best Actress, and Jason Robards won Best Supporting Actor for that film. So again, these are films that come with pedigree, and they have survived. Cineasts know Network. They know All the President's Men. They know Taxi Driver. And these were multiple, films with multiple nominations. As I say, you can argue about the relative merits of these films and which deserved it. But again, I just go back to my main point that when we're deep in Rocky 4 and Rocky 5 and films that certainly lack in certain merits, it's almost hard to remember the film started with a film nominated for 10 Academy Awards.
I mean, I was thinking like in the alternate universe where Rocky didn't get a sequel, but it won Best Picture, but somehow, Stallone just didn't return back to the character. He just kind of like moved on with his career.
He wanted to investigate new plots.
And I do wonder, would it kind of have the same? Would it hold the same stature that it does now? Without the backing of the other films, of the series, would it be kind of like that film that beat Network and Taxi Driver and All the President's Men?
I think it's a double-edged sword, Chris, because I don't know that I don't know that it would be as remembered.
Yeah.
And I think it might be one of those films that people look back and went, "Oh, the corny one won that year."
Yeah.
A little bit of sort of intellectual snobbery towards it. What the sequels have done is help to give it enduring name value, and it's a part of American culture now. Having said that, there will be people listening tonight who will be surprised when we say it's a Best Picture winner, because I think the sequels undermine the overall quality of the series in some respects.
I think there's probably an argument to say that as much as I do enjoy the sequels, they actually help the original somewhat, because when you stack them next to the original, regardless of what you think of it, Rocky is a really, really good film. In fact, it's a great film, but it just kind of like, it makes it look even that much better compared to, like, let's just say Rocky 4 or 5 or even like sort of the slightly lesser ones, or they kind of go for like the more blockbuster type crowd, you know what I mean? So it kind of like holds up itself, okay, but it's still a superior film within that canon. So it kind of it propels it somewhat in comparison, I think. So maybe
I think it backs that theory that they always say we've got one great story in us. I think over the years Stallone has written and directed quite a few things, and he's never really shown me. There are significant pluses in some of these sequels, and I'm going to speak very highly of some of his work, but I think Rocky was his story. And we'll get into that just before we go through the film as we talk about, the genesis of this film. This was a story, Rocky was a story, that Sly needed to tell. as all artists have creativity they need to get out of them. And he started off in New York City, working, as he said, he was pigeonholed as a heavy. He was cast in films as, thug number one, as we were talking before we sort of came on air, looking at his IMDb list, his filmography. When we get to parts of this film, where he's drinking eggs. Well, he's drinking eggs because in real life, he had no electricity, no working fridge. He'd put some eggs on the windowsill to keep them cool and then drink them because he had nothing to cook them with. And he thought, well, that's some protein. He said he only found out years later that was really bad for him. So he lived this life. He lived poverty. He lived desperation. And he lived never being given a shot. He wasn't in a lot before this. Certainly not of great value. It all changes when he goes to see... he gets tickets. I think they were given to him because he didn't have any money. He goes to see Muhammad Ali, Chuck Wepner. Chuck Wepner was known as the Bayonne Bleeder, which is not the best nickname you want for a, I always thought of that with football when, David James was known as Calamity James. And I'm thinking, when it's a goalkeeper, you want them to be, like safe hands or something, not Calamity. The Bayonne Bleeder is not really going to, strike fear into people. Sonny Liston, who was the world heavyweight champion that Muhammad Ali took his first title from as Cassius Clay, was his last fight before he was found dead was against Chuck Wepner. And Chuck Wepner needed something like 130 stitches after that fight. He bled very freely. He had an okay record. It was something like 30-9. He'd lost about, when you scale that up to Rocky's record, which is something like 64, 44 wins and 20 losses, they're kind of similar. And Chuck Wepner was Ali's first fight after the Rumble in the Jungle, the 1974 Zaire fight when he won his title back from George Foreman at the age of 32, which was relatively advanced for that age. And Foreman was a wrecking ball we didn't see the likes of again until Tyson. Now, after that, Ali started taking, by and large, easier fights. I mean, he did have a third Frazier fight, the Thriller in Manila, but I think he saw Chuck Wepner as an easy payday. They fought in March 1975, and Ali barely trained for it. You can see all of this in this film. And somewhere around round 9, 15-round fights in those days, Wepner put Ali on the floor. He decked him. Now, what Ali had wasn't a cast iron jaw, but he had enormous powers of recuperation. Lennox Lewis, for example, knocked down twice in his career, but knocked out twice in his career. Ali was put down about 5 times, but got up every time and was fighting fairly evenly quite soon afterwards in every case. When you actually watch a replay of the fight, he kind of steps on Ali's toe and kind of half pushes him. It's debatable whether it was a real knockdown, but he was so embarrassed by that, Ali, he went for a knockout like never before and stopped Wepner with 19 seconds left in the fight. This inspired Stallone to go home and write this because he saw his own story in this, and he went home and wrote Rocky in 3 days. And it changed. The final version of the film has differences to that script, but we have to give credit to that. But this was a desperate jobbing actor who then went to try and sell this script and was offered lots of money for it to sell it and let people like Ryan O'Neal or James Caan play the role. And he took a tiny amount of money, a relatively small budget, just over $1 million for this film, to be in it himself because it was his one shot.
Which to me does take some balls, really, doesn't it? Not many people would actually do that. They normally sort of like think, okay, well, I'll take the screenwriting credit and then try and work with that. But he kind of like saw like a bigger picture. It's like, no, this is my story. I have to play him, Yeah. And it's like, well, good on you, good on you for like sticking to your wall. And it kind of makes Rocky, like, even though it was his one story, shall we say, but it is almost like Stallone's story. Like, there are parallels in Rocky to what Stallone was in his own life. Like he was the underdog, taking that chance or given this
there are
opportunity.
elements of autobiography to it.
Well, yeah, there are. It's definitely. I mean, like Rocky is Stallone's story in more ways than one. I mean,
he even says his
in the
apartment
film
looked like that.
Yeah,
he says during the film his apartment looked like that. The drinking of the eggs is kind of painted as a training thing here, but again, he did that, and he was typecast in much the same way Rocky's only good for breaking thumbs and club fighting. Stallone was only good for like heavy number one in a film cast, and it was just a conversation where he said, yeah, I think he read for John Gio Avildsen, or was it for Robert Chartoff? It may have been for Robert Chartoff, but he was walking out the door when he said, well, I write as well, and I've done this script, will you read it? And he was like, yeah, I'll read it. And it's just a lot of chance in all of this.
It's all about self-respect as well, isn't it? Because like obviously with the character of Rocky, it's basically how he can earn self-respect and not, and go through the ranks and not be a bum. And it's the same obviously with Stallone as well, kind of like making his way to Hollywood, trying to make it and just trying to get some respect, respect for his name.
I was just gonna say he even sold his dog, while filming this, which kind of like turns up in the film as well. But it's one of those sort of hardships he had.
Because his
Did you hear the amounts of money involved?
Sorry.
There's a few hundred, wasn't it?
No, he sold the dog for something like, and this bit may be wrong, but he sold the dog for something like $60 because he was desperate. And 6 months later, he bought the dog back.
Oh yeah, because he was like, "Oh, this has to be in this film."
Yeah, he had to pay $15,000 to get him back.
Oh, that was it. Yeah, I was thinking of that. But yeah, actually, I think they had him for like a couple of months or something, and he's like, "No, this is it's my dog. I've got to have him back." Yeah. And obviously he appears in the sequel as well, so it's just like, oh, but you can really tell that that's obviously his dog and has been with him for, was it 2 or 3 years or something? So.
I was reading up on Bubkas the other day, and he was born in '69 and died in '81.
Oh.
And there are photos of Stallone with him in like the very start of the '70s when he's a puppy.
Yeah, baby.
It's really very sweet.
Yeah.
And he always says, I had to pay $15,000 to get him back, and he was worth every penny. So
I bet his new family were gutted, but at the same time, it's just like, oh,
They can't have been that gutted. They could have said no. They took the money.
He took. They obviously didn't love him that much, did they? So no, we'll take the money.
So Becca, before we go any further, because normally we go through the cast, before we get into this film, who else is in this?
Starring Sylvester Stallone, Talia Shire, Carl Weathers, and Burgess Meredith. The score by Bill Conti, script by Sly Stallone, and directed by John Avildsen, and released in 1976.
There we go. Didn't even mention Carl Weathers.
And Carl Weathers as well.
There were some interesting alternate casts for this, because obviously we've talked about Rocky, and when I read the list of people that could have played this role, Ryan O'Neal. It was very, very,
would it be as famous had it not
was
been
Arnold
Stallone?
Schwarzenegger at all?
Yeah, if it was Arnie, would it have the status that it has?
Well, it's very similar to the list you see for Superman. The only name on the list that I go, I could see that is James Caan. I could see James Caan playing Rocky. It wouldn't be exactly the same, but I could see it.
It is kind of known for sort of like not heavy, but kind of like heavy or like menacing roles as well, wasn't it? I guess
it would have been a different character. I think it wouldn't have been like the Rocky that we have in this.
But I couldn't see Ryan O'Neal in the role. But anyway, Carl Weathers was. So there were other choices for the main characters. I'm blanking on the first choice for Adrian. I've forgotten her name, but the first choice for Paulie was Harvey Keitel.
Oh God.
Okay. I think he might be a bit too hard and intimidating to play that character.
Yeah. I mean,
the first choice.
Comes up, he's just I really dislike him, but I just think Harvey Keitel would have been absolutely terrible. Like,
he's an asshole, really and time doesn't improve him really. He stays within the cast, but like Paulie's always an asshole all the way through this. Yeah. Particularly when you get to
having somebody like Keitel sort of play him, I think it would have been really scary and menacing.
And the first choice for Apollo was Ken Norton. Ken Norton was one of that great era of heavyweights. He beat Muhammad Ali, sort of a 2-1 overall record to Ali, but he was briefly heavyweight champion. And he lost his title to Larry Holmes, who was another great heavyweight. So, they nearly had a heavy... And he went on to act. He was in Mandingo and a few other things. He died about 3 or 4 years ago, I think. But he was one of that great era of heavyweights. But for whatever reason, he didn't want to do it. And Carl Weathers just read the script and said, "This is me," and just said, "I have to play this."
He does sort of play like kind of that character quite well, really. I mean, like what he kind of nailed. I mean, it is basically meant to be Muhammad Ali-esque.
Yes.
You can tell that definitely for sure.
Plays...
He's very smart. He's very switched on. He knows how to spend his money. He knows exactly how to manipulate the media. He knows what people want. He knows what his public expects of him. Well, he's very switched on and knows all about how to control his image.
It's the fast-talking kind of like overconfident showman that side of it that I think Carl Weathers just nails. He just like kind of like just starts like sort of talking at 100 miles per hour. And like just sort of
a thinker, not a stinker.
Yeah, kind of thing.
Well, yeah, you've only got to watch When We Were Kings. Ali, before he goes off to Zaire, he's at the airport being interviewed, and he's telling kids to like brush their teeth and shit.
Yeah, that's what he's like. Be a doctor, be a lawyer, carry another briefcase.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where it all comes from.
Yeah, so it's very much based on that character. Rocky is loosely based on it's based on that fight more than it's based on Wepner. I mean, Wepner had his problems with the law. You know, he cuts up horrendously. And he was a part-time boxer, a bit like Rocky. He was a liquor salesman. Yeah, he wasn't a particularly great fighter. It was an easy fight for Ali. It wasn't quite the same as going through a book and say, "I'll fight him." But the principle is there. Somebody getting their shot. And not only getting their shot, but when they get it, they're not even sure they're up to it. And they sort of only half want it. Because with opportunity comes the chance to like fail as well.
Yeah, it's like he's kind of like always been that downtrodden guy, and even accepting a job, he's kind of like, yeah, I'm just taking the money almost, and it takes some sort of like motivation within himself to kind of step up and sort of like, no, I'm actually gonna want to do something. I mean, like we'll get more into it, I suppose, as we get into the film, but I don't want to ruin it when we talk about the film sequentially. But Becca, so what were your general thoughts on the film? Like, this is the first Rocky, your first time watching Rocky. What did you think?
Going into it, I didn't quite know what I was going to expect, really. Obviously, I knew the impact on pop culture that it's had. I thought, to be honest, it was going to be like an out-and-out sports film. I was just like, oh no, kind of like grew up with sort of like wrestling, stuff like that. I wasn't really in it, but it was on TV. So I was like, oh, it's going to be another kind of sports, kind of boxing movie. I didn't expect the kind of the human drama behind it. But no, I was pleasantly surprised. But no, I really enjoyed the first movie. As soon as I finished watching it, I want to watch it again. There's a definite character arc there.
Did you know the result at the end of the film?
How do you mean?
I mean, when you put that film on, do you know how it ends? Did you expect Rocky to win that fight?
No. I don't know, really. I kind of just thought, oh, no, it's just one of those things. It's kind of like, because it's also, these are underdogs, so they can end two ways. They can win or they can lose. But very often, a lot of these sports stories, very often the underdog very often doesn't win. And then, kind of goes on, maybe there's an offshoot or a spin-off or a sequel, indeed, in this case. But like for this film, obviously, it creates like, oh, there's going to be no rematch. And obviously the sequel is the rematch. I'll yet to watch that as well, but I'll get there. But it's just one of those things you kind of think, oh, you're rooting for them all the way through. But I think, to me, with the ending, it wasn't, because it wasn't as clear-cut. But then it was like, oh yeah, he's won. So, yeah, it could have gone either way, I think.
Yeah, I think usually when we see it in these sort of sports films, like, the hero has to win via knockout. Like, it would be very, like, undramatic if he won just on points. It's not like it would be kind of disappointing as a visual, as a visual element that cinema is. Just see sort of like, and they win it on technicality. All right, okay.
You get and the commentators are going, I think Apollo's been robbed there. Credits.
Nope.
You know what I mean? But usually they create like a different way, so it's not actually winning the match. That's the thing. It's like it becomes like winning something else. I mean, you see it in other sports movies, and I'm not sure if Rocky was the first film to actually do that. I mean, it's my go-to one when I think of films that do that, but I don't know if that's actually happened before. But certainly it's like kind of like the trend that, like, you know, the ultimate achievement isn't winning the match. It's finding like your confidence, or it's finding your self-worth, or it's making, or in the case of Rocky, it was like, I just want to just prove myself, you know, or I just want to like just do one thing right. I want to like go the distance, or whatever it was, you know. It's something a lot more like emotional gauging, rather than like, yeah, I beat him, you know what I mean?
It's more personal, isn't it? It's kind of more
it's more
the story arc that he takes, rather than, you know, as say winning the match. But also interestingly, I was paying attention to Adrian's story as well. I think the film was very much all about her than it is about Rocky and his arc.
I think their arcs are in parallel.
Definitely, for sure. But I think it's really interesting, kind of like,
I look forward to getting.
She has a sort of physical and emotional transformation throughout the film, which I think is quite interesting.
I don't know if you guys picked it up. I mean, certainly Becca, first viewing, and I think you've watched it a couple of times now. If you know the film well, it is dropped at some point that Creed has never been taken the distance, which is a little bit unrealistic, because even Tyson had a couple of times, George Foreman had, Rocky Marciano had. I can't think of a champion who'd literally knocked everyone out when they got there. But it's that little sort of just twist in the tail. Much harder puncher than, say, Ali, who wasn't a massive hitter.
I think it's just a like element, the fact that, you know, he is.
It's never been done.
He is the best that there is around. You know, he's cocky. He's
it makes
cocky
it
for
more
a
of a
reason.
victory in himself.
Yeah.
He's not merely the fifth man to take him the distance. He's the first.
Yes. It's like, it's the unexpected, like, oh my god, this guy was the one guy who did that, you know. So,
so a couple of other general things for. Well, I mean, I'll just give my first view. I think I already have. I mean, this I think stands as tall as any of the other nominees this year. It's a genuinely great film. I think it is. It's both undermined and strengthened by the sequels, and we'll talk more about that in later weeks. Certainly, the couple of things I want to draw attention to, one I will repeatedly draw to through the film, is how cheap it is. I'm not necessarily being negative there, but there's a lot of tricks to disguise the cheapness in places, and I think it's fascinating. The second thing I want to mention before Chris gives his sort of first view is this film is possibly more elevated by its score than any other I can think of. I can't think of this film or this film series without this score.
I think the score's quite interesting, because if you listen to it, there's a lot of interplay between diegetic and non-diegetic music in this film. The score is only, this will sound really stupid, but it's only used at certain integral emotive
it's more
points in the
sparing
film.
in this film. That's
Exactly.
money.
And there's a lot of the time there's great swathes of it without music at all, and all you hear is just like the background or whatever, you know, whatever's going on in the background.
I mean, it's better next week because it's similar but with a budget. So I'm not saying the film's better, but the score has a few high points next week that I'm like, yeah, that was in the second one. I really like that. It's all playing on the same themes.
I mean,
but all I'm saying is
that we know from Rocky, I think, have come from the sequels. Like, for example, obviously we've got the Gonna Fly Now track, but things like Eye of the Tiger and other sort of famous themes don't come along until later on in the film, in the series.
They are the best workout themes in the world. If you like,
definitely. This is why they're so iconic.
If you listen to the Rocky theme, if you got like a playlist that looks like the Rocky theme, Eye of the Tiger, and anything that's on like Rocky 4, it's the best.
You got to
it's the best pump out, like, you know, get your exercise done kind of workout. It motivates you to go like, yeah, I'm gonna go the distance. You know, when as soon as the Hearts on Fire comes on, you're just like, no, that's it. I'm belting this thing.
But the score unashamedly plays our emotions, and I completely forgive it for that. I think it's wonderful. Chris, what are your first thoughts before we get to it?
It's a very slow burn film. It's a very subtle, humble film, and I think it's a very sweet natured film. I think it's just a great, well structured film. I said film way too many times there, but
no, you go for it.
No, it's fine. But it's not really much more really to say really, other than like Rocky is just a classic. It is basically Stallone's story, and it's told, you know, as Dave said, it's very low budget, but I think it kind of benefits from that, and I think it's told with a sincere eye. I think you can call it kind of cheesy, but it's completely sincere, and I think it earns that by the end of the film. You are.
I think you can tell the difference. This is not focus group cheese.
Yeah.
This is one man's vision, and he's got a bit of sentiment about him.
It is, because it
There's
is
nothing
his
wrong
own
with
story,
that.
as you were saying.
Yeah, I will agree on one element of budget. There's a scene we'll get to as we go through the film in a minute, where the scene only turns out as it does because they have no money, and it is so elevated by that. But we'll get there.
Okay, so shall we talk about this film sequentially?
We shall. Let's start on November the 25th, 1975, where he's fighting Spider Rico. What a name for a boxer that is.
Spider Rico. Yeah, it was that fight, but I was just shocked by, obviously, because it's kind of on the, sort of lower down sort of like rankings. I just kind of thought how little money they earned. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like, here's your $38.
Yeah, it's just $38. You've got to live on that for the next 2 weeks. Oh.
Nice little bit of storytelling. Firstly, Stallone says on his commentary, does a commentary for this film, and he does another one for Rocky Balboa later on. And he did them around the same. I think he did the commentary to this around the time he was prepping Rocky Balboa, so about 12, 13 years ago. And he said then that they didn't have many people, so everything is shot close in. It's absolutely drenched in sort of smoke. Everyone's smoking. The first thing you see is that sort of stained glass of Jesus, and it cuts down. He's wearing really tatty old shorts, and he's having this really kind of messy fight. They're not really, it's two completely unmotivated boxers not doing a lot until Rocky's headbutted. And then we see that when the switch turns in him, he's actually quite brutal.
You kind of almost forget with all the kind of like sheen of the later Rocky films how dark and grubby this is. You really do feel like sort of the sweat and the grime of the ring. It feels like it's just like in a sweaty cellar somewhere, and you just think like, with like 5 people watching, it just does. Yeah, it just feels like
the whole film just feels like really, really grimy, to use your words.
Yeah.
I think it calls to mind the sort of kitchen sink going on over here in Britain in the 60s.
Yeah,
really, it's that kind of filmmaking.
It feels like a kitchen sink film in places.
It does very much so, especially because like somewhere like Philadelphia as well. I mean, it's a beautiful city, obviously, so much history. If you go there, especially as an English person, and do the Freedom Trail, it's just like, oh, I feel so guilty afterwards. But also, I mean, still today, it suffers like terrible sort of crime, addiction, poverty, just huge swathes of living well below the poverty line. And you can see that. You can see that in this film
as well.
Well, exactly, that's it. Unfortunately, but you can see that.
Lots
and Tom Hanks getting AIDS.
Yes.
Yeah.
Obviously,
lots of that going around.
Not the only time AIDS will get mentioned in this series. A lot of that area, particularly where the gym is, because Joe Frazier had a gym around there. Joe Frazier, who we see in a cameo in this film, one of the great heavyweights of the 70s, very Tyson-esque in style, and only in style. But one of the greats, had a great trilogy. He had a very... No, I just mean that he was a bit easier to hurt. Tyson would come out and be very, very strong in the first round. Joe tended to lose the first round. He tended to be it tended to take him a round or two to warm up. But he was very upset, for example, when we get to Rocky 3 and there's a statue of Rocky. And it's like, but I'm world heavyweight champion and I'm from Philadelphia, thanks.
Yes, but did he end the Cold War? I don't think he did.
That is well, exactly. That is all being sort of subsumed by the university now over time, apparently.
Yeah.
So it is changing, but we see the poorer elements of that city. Obviously, it's not a tourist information film, is it?
No, it's a rags to riches. Well, Cinderella story, pretty much, isn't it?
There's a lack of vanity here. We see Rocky 2 or 3 times in this film, really dressed like shit. I mean, first off, the trunks he's wearing in this fight, they're kind of...
There's a hole in his vest and everything.
They're awful. Yeah, when he's dating Adrian later, there's a hole in his vest. Later on, he's working the heavy bag in the gym. There's a hole not far from where his dick would be.
Needs to get some new shoes and new shorts and new trousers and everything.
Everything is just screaming poverty.
It's like you just think, like, how many times has he washed that like hoodie and jogger bottoms? Like, it's like you think, oh my god, that must stink to high heaven.
Absolutely. So at this point, he's fighting kind of as a hobby. He more or less says that to Adrian later on, that he's still a professional boxer, but he's very much a semi-pro. He's not earning a lot. He's fighting in clubs. We do see him and Spider Rico go back to the locker room later on. They're smoking, and they are paid a double-digit amount of money. That's all. I can't remember the exact amounts, but they're netting.
I think he wins like
$40
Spider gets like $17 or something, and he wins like $40 or something ridiculous like that.
And that's it. That's it. He leaves. He's got a cut over his eye, and he heads home and sees little Marie. That's straight away, isn't it?
There's a few scenes before that, I think.
He stops off at well, you see him like sort of walking by, like a bunch of like people singing.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think one of those is his brother Frank, isn't it? I think because he's a sort of well-known musician as well.
Yeah, sings round bins.
Yeah, he's relevant. No, if you look up
Much
Frank
like he
Stallone
is today, really.
and find out all about his career. But yeah, so he goes to the pet shop and obviously get introduced to Adrian as well.
Well, yeah, he's kind of like always kind of hanged around there, just kind of like an excuse to kind of talk to Adrian, really. I always like sort of felt like these two kind of like have always been fancy each other from afar. I mean, Adrian's like very shy. She's very timid.
She's definitely looking over her glasses at him.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. You kind of get the impression I think he's more keen, but I think she's obviously painfully shy, and later on we kind of found out why that is. We meet Butkus as well. Is this so cute? Honest question.
Yeah. That he did say in the commentary that's a little bit. I mean, I don't know if you'd have a dog that size in a cage that size in a pet shop, but he just said it works. But he said we like the idea and I wanted my dog in it, so fair enough. One of the things that is enhanced by next week in this week's film is we find out next week Rocky can barely read. It's not that he can't read at all, but he certainly can't read well. And so when you see him now, saying what's in the feed for his turtles or whatever it is, he's practicing that because he can't read. And that's really enhanced by we find that out next week.
I always found like there's always like I always think of Rocky as kind of like a man-child in the way he kind of acts. He's not very bright, and he knows he's not very bright. But I think what kind of carries him through, he's just got like this kind of heart of gold. He's very much like an innocent, like a child, but he just kind of like just keeps on talking. Like that's one of the things I picked up about Rocky. He just kind of like keeps on talking. He's like talking absolute fucking nonsense. But it's like but he's kind of endearing because there's no harshness to him. He's all. He means well.
I mean, you got the kind of contradiction between obviously being heavy for a loan shark, but then obviously taking somebody like Marie under his wing, albeit briefly, and saying basically don't be, or when I hang out with smart people, all that sort of thing. So you got the contradiction there. You think actually he's an ass, but actually no, he's a really nice guy.
Well, I think it's like that first scene where he is like sort of picking up the money for the loan shark. He's like he's telling him like sort of like you should have saved. You should have planned ahead or whatever. It's like he's kind of like giving him advice. I think how many fucking folks would do that? I mean, I know he's like he's still doing what he's been paid to do, but like
he was told to break his thumb and didn't.
Yeah, and he's actually giving advice. It's like we should think ahead more. You wouldn't get yourself in these situations. And just kind of like, well, how many fucking it kind of goes to show you like just what it kind of like the kind of like how this guy kind of thinks.
It's the perseverance as well. He's still fighting after 64 fights, which historically is not that high by modern standards. It certainly is. But he goes in every morning, tells her a joke. Goes in every evening, tells her a joke, and she barely responds because she's so shy. And we get the impression he's been doing this for years.
He's getting a bit pissed off.
He's not though, is he?
No, he's not. No,
he's all right about it.
He keeps pushing.
And then he finds Marie on her street corner smoking and swearing. She's not very old, is she?
This is 12 or something. She says.
12, something like that.
Yeah.
Awful.
You see Marie again in a later film.
Okay.
We'll get
Keep an eye open.
You won't miss her. It'll be quite obvious when we get there.
Yeah.
But yeah, he walks her home and starts giving her life advice. And when she says, screw you, creepo, he talks to himself about, well, who am I to be giving advice? He doesn't really believe in himself. He just knows that he's just going about his life trying to be good.
Yeah, he's just trying to kind of do what's right, and just trying to offer a bit of advice, but it's like, well, what do I know? But
So somewhere around here, we cut to him going the next morning into his gym. Do we meet Apollo before or after this?
We only see Apollo while he's in the drink having a bar. I think we've already been introduced to Paulie, haven't
in the
we?
bar having a drink.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And he comes up on the TV.
He's just flown into Philadelphia for final training, we think, for a fight with Mac Lee Green, who's like the #1 contender. And it's going to be the start of America's bicentennial celebrations, which, assuming it's New Year's Day or around then, tells us that if this fight's taking place on November the 25th, it is only about 5 weeks away. That line is dropped later, but we don't know how much later that was meant to be in time. Yeah, we are about 5 weeks away from a fight between the champ and the #1 contender in Philadelphia as the start of America's bicentennial, which was 1976. The celebrations for that. What we also see is Rocky is deeply respectful of him, because the bartender just goes, look at that joker, basically like a lot of people were with Muhammad Ali. He's lionized now, but at the time a lot of people were, look at that mouthy twat. Because it was, there was, during a lot of his career, a lot of people tuned in hoping to see him shut up. Be knocked on his ass.
To be fair, he was an arrogant git. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, he knew what sold tickets. I mean, it's a lot of people. I'm not putting them on the same level by any means, but an awful lot of people used to tune into Chris Eubanks fights hoping to see him get beat. So there would have been that attitude around. By this stage of Ali's career, he was becoming an awful lot more popular, or loved. He was always popular in ticket sales terms, but he won't have anything of it. He's like, he got his shot and he won. And we also get introduced to what a dickhead Paulie is.
Yeah, he's a knob. There's two people I can't stand in this film. It's Paulie and Buddy. I just want to smack both of them in the face.
Which one's Buddy?
The loan shark. Is
Oh,
sort of
Gazzo.
crony. Yeah, he always tries to antagonise him. I just think, shut up, you bastard. So.
Yeah. The actor who played Gazzo, we'll get to him a bit later, but he died relatively young. He died at something like 51, something like that, 52.
Oh.
In the late 80s, because he was a haemophiliac. And he cut himself in the shower and got out, hit the back of his head or something. And he went and sat on his couch and went to sleep instead of seeking health and bled to death.
Oh.
So, that's the loan shark he works for. Again, it's not very black and white for a film that it is not. Sports films are normally sort of white hat, black hat, a bit like Westerns, And he's not, because he's a loan shark and he's quite happy to, have people who don't pay him get physically hurt.
But at the same time, he's quite happy to he's basically
trying to help Rocky,
isn't he? He's trying to help him out financially.
Yeah, is it more out of a best interest kind of thing? Because, I kind of need a heavy anyway, so I'm just looking after him.
Yeah, keep him on the payroll.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, there's also, when he's training for the fight, he gets some money from him to help him out,
He tells him to stop smoking.
That's not really for his own benefit, I don't think, because, if Rocky went on to achieve anything with it and he's earning reasonably well for the fight, he's not likely to go back to Gazzo.
No, he's
probably gonna be like, right, I want to cut that, please.
All of a sudden, the world champ showing up to collect,
Well, you just imagine ESPN going.
Give me 10%.
Tonight we'll be interviewing former heavyweight contender Rocky Balboa just after he's finished breaking some legs. It's just I don't get the order right. I know that he goes into his gym the next day, Mickey's gym.
Yeah.
Which is upstairs on a street corner in a grimy bit of Philadelphia. Goes to his locker, which has been his locker. It's dropped in dialogue for 6 years.
Oh, that was the previous. That was the previous scene. So.
It's been taken from him.
I think that's another kind of way that you can show Rocky's kind of quite low in terms of self-worth. It's been his locker for 6 years, and all of a sudden it's been given to this new upstart. And also Mickey as well. He's somebody, he's been in the business. He says 50 years. And the whole reason that he basically gives Rocky a hard time is because he's got so much talent, but he just wastes it.
Yeah, disapproves of his lifestyle choices as well. The whole business of working for a loan shark.
Completely chews him out. It's kind of like...
That's a little later, but yeah.
It's kind of weird knowing the sort of how Mickey means to the series, and if they think this is their actual first scene together, and they kind of really at odds. Well, not at odds, but Mickey's just literally resenting him completely.
Yeah.
I think they're coming at it from different perspectives, aren't they? So imagine, Burge Meredith is an absolute legend. He's one of the probably most iconic American actors of all time.
Sorry,
yeah, literally. Penguin aside.
That was what that was. That was
Yeah.
Chris's penguin aside.
That was his penguin aside. But no, obviously, later on in the film, we find out that he's basically been in a career for 50 plus years. He didn't have a trainer. He didn't have kind of what he thinks that Rocky has had sort of growing up. And that, that's why he wants to impart all this kind of knowledge and experience to him and train him up, as it were. So they're coming at it from different angles, I guess. So that's my impression of it. And that's why, says that you've got all this talent, kid, it's just going to waste, and I disapprove of your lifestyle.
And around this time, we meet Apollo properly. And Apollo is very sort of business suits, he's almost forgotten the sport, and it's all about career and promotion. He's got a promoter. I forget the character's name, but he's played by Thaler David, who died about 18 months after this film was made. Died at 51 of a heart attack. Mackley re-injures himself. I think he breaks his hand or something like that. And they can't find a contender who's willing to fight at 5 weeks' notice, which is actually pretty likely, actually.
Yeah. It's kind of
it's really short notice, isn't it, up against the world champion? And he says, they're not injured, they're just scared, And
it has, it's generally a really good idea. I know it's based on real life anyway, but it's kind of he has a bright idea of, I don't know, why don't you just fight a complete nobody?
America is the land of opportunity. He finds the angle on it, and that's quite well written.
Yeah.
Because he could have just done that, Chris. He could have just gone, let's just give a nobody a chance. And they could have padded that out into a scene. Now, whilst that is what he's doing, we get party to his thinking on it. His thinking is, well, there's a marketing angle there. It's, the land of opportunity. It's our anniversary. Let me give somebody an opportunity because I'm sentimental.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of... I don't know about you, but I don't hate Apollo. Initially, no. I don't actually,
God, no.
he is charming, and yes, he is arrogant with that. But you kind of get him as a character. You kind of understand him. He's not malicious at all. He's just if anything, he's just a bit above himself, really.
No, there's no. I don't think there's any malice in it. It's just he's very full of himself, very arrogant, and he knows how to promote himself. As I say, he knows how to control the media, how to, not control the media, but how to promote his own image.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think.
Well,
there's a Shakespearean phrase, but I won't say it.
The other thing is, if he's Muhammad Ali, effectively, he's already one of the all-time greats.
Yeah. It's just usually in these kind of films, you're so used to the other guy being a bellend.
Yeah.
But I think
that normally gets dressed up. You've only got to watch something like Cinderella Man.
Yeah.
I'm blanking on the fighter's name, not Crow's character, the guy who takes the title off. Max Baer. Max Baer's son, Max Baer Jr., was in the Beverly Hillbillies TV show. Now, Max Baer was a joker. There's stories of him knocking down a fighter and then throwing himself to the floor and saying, last one up's a sissy. When he had a heart attack, he was in a hotel, and the concierge or whatever said to him, would you like the house doctor? And he said, I'd rather have a people doctor. And that was his last words. And yet in this film, he's in Cinderella Man, he's like Ivan Drago. He's a fucking killer. So it does normally get blown out of all proportion. And I like that they don't really do that with Apollo. He's just giving someone a chance. He needs to fill a gap. It's expediency. And they don't dress up the fact that he comes in a bit undertrained. He's ready on the night because you see him warming up, and he's got quite a fearsome look about him. But
he's ripped, isn't he?
But when the fight starts and he's moving around, they're saying doesn't look quite at his best. But unfortunately, this film was shot in 28 days. They didn't have enough time to bulk and unbulk and all the rest of it. So they look as fit as they're going to look at any point in the film. And in fact, Rocky running up the stairs and steps of the gallery and struggling, and him running up all triumphant was shot about an hour apart.
Yeah.
But yeah, Apollo has definitely taken his eye off the ball, but we see the scene that allows them to pick Rocky in a few scenes' time.
It's always like I was going, like I was saying before with endings, you can always tell which way the film is going to go. And it's normally, if the opponent that the hero is facing has some sort of thing about him where you think, he's not all bad, or he's a worthy winner kind of thing. You can kind of think, right, well, it's going to end in like the draw, but the hero winning some sort of it's like something about himself which ultimately what he really is going after.
Yeah, I mean, only a shit film would have that guy getting brain damage or dying.
Yeah. More on that later. No, but the point is, like, but you can tell if the film sort of portrays the opponent as like a complete bell end, well, obviously the hero is going to win, obviously, because I always think of like the you remember that film Wimbledon.
Yes.
I always remember because like I remember watching like sort of the last half of it, and then by the time when Paul Bettany gets to the final, I was thinking, is this going to end like Rocky? Is this going to be like, and then like and then the guy he was playing against said something like really like dickheadish. And no, he's going to win it. He's going to win it. I instantly knew because like that's how it plays. It wouldn't feel right if the guy was.
That's quite a sexist film, isn't it? Because Kirsten Dunst's character loses in like the semi-final, but it's all right because the man wins. It's crap.
It's a bit cringeworthy to watch.
Well, you can't have two victories. That's just a bit too much, isn't it?
That's not the way these things work.
No, I don't know.
I just remember the CG on the tennis balls being awful. But yeah, anyway, that was Wimbledon.
It's a very badly lit film as well. The lighting's terrible.
It's no Karate Kid.
No.
Certainly no Rocky either.
Same director as Karate Kid as well. Rocky.
Yeah, no, that's what made me think of it. John G. Avildsen directed the first 3 Karate Kid films.
Yeah.
But, which is such a self-conscious attempt to remake this. Because the Karate Kid is basically Rocky. But anyway, so we've established who Apollo is. We've established he's unbeaten, never been taken the distance. Very, very comfortable and talented champion with a gift for self-promotion. His opponent for a gala event has been injured. We've established Rocky has had a lot of fights and does it sort of part-time. Where do we go from there? Are we close to sort of him going on a date with...
Yeah, I think we're pretty much there because he finds it, it's called Italian Stallion, which is quite good. And then from that we jump to the scene where...
it's Thanksgiving, isn't it?
It's Thanksgiving, yeah, and he gets an earful from Paulie.
Who's a piss pot in this film?
Yeah, he's a real athlete, but I think that's what kind of gives, that's what gives Adrian the push that she needs really.
It's a bit of a weird, complex situation, isn't it? I mean, like, Paulie's meant to be like Rocky's mate, but yet he's also shagging his sister. It's just a little bit
it's a bit awkward, isn't it?
A bit of a
Rocky is shagging Paulie's sister.
Yes.
Just to be clear.
Yeah.
He's Rocky's mate and shagging his sister.
Just to clarify, people.
That's a very different film.
Yeah, that would be complex.
Unfortunately, she probably verbally abuses and calls her a loser and everything, but they go out ice skating, which is very nice.
He tells Rocky if she doesn't start, if her body's going to dry up.
That's horrible.
Horrible imagery because she's 30. Imagine, eh?
And he's only 32, and 30 as well. And look where he is.
Yeah. So they head off to the ice rink, and this is the scene that there's a nice callback to this in Rocky Balboa later as well. But this scene, when Stallone wrote it, it was a dinner scene, and they were going to sit opposite a table and just talk. And I think it was Avildsen who said, "That's too static.
You need to have some action here."
So it was rewritten as an ice skating scene, but they were going to have like a couple of hundred extras. It was going to be a properly open rink. And when they couldn't afford that, Stallone made the decision, and it was Stallone's decision, that we either need all of them or none of them. It's no point putting 10 people in. And so this scene is purely expedience. And he wrote it in and couldn't skate, which is why he's running alongside.
It's kind of like it's kind of a thing when you just like write the scene to make it work. It's like, and it just makes it work. So why don't I just do it when it's closing? And
I love what a loser is because he goes in and says she's not very well, which is really flattering to her. You can see she looks fit, right? And then he says to her, $10 for 10 minutes, and Rocky says 8. And basically, he tries to haggle, and they end up at 10 anyway.
Yeah, he tries to barter, but it's very unsuccessful.
He's just shit at it. But it's quite a sweet scene, and he's
It's very romantic as well. I think
I think it's lovely.
A romantic sort of scene, I think.
Yeah.
He's talking shit though, because he says where the word southpaw comes from, and it's not. It's a baseball term.
Yeah, but it's very. His heart's in the right place. He wants to kind of educate him more about it.
And he's just. We get a bit of character stuff there. He's never had his nose broken. We get that he's never had. He's had 64 fights. That's where that's dropped.
Yep.
And then when they call time, they go back to his apartment. This seems quite uncomfortable.
It is. I did think it was a bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's just a bit awkward, really, isn't it? You just think.
First thing I noticed, three things actually around this whole scene I'd never noticed before. The first thing is when they leave Paulie's house to go to the rink, he tries to be a gentleman and let her go first, and she's so nervous she doesn't move each time. And he ends up having to walk in front of her, and it happens 2 or 3 times, just walking from the door of that house. So that's a nice little bit of character thing. And I would imagine that would have been the director who'd said, what about? Let's try that. When they get back to the apartment, the second thing I noticed was when you see a close-up of Talia Shire's glasses. Now, I don't know if this was by design or just they had no money and these glasses were damaged and they had no choice. But the 2 frames for the 2 eyes are at slightly different angles from each other. They've got bent. So that implies she's not very well off. And also, he takes his jumper off, leaving him with a vest on. And there's a whacking great hole in it near his jaw. So, it's
sexy.
And he keeps trying to get her to come over here and sit down. And that should be sleazy, but it doesn't come off too bad till he basically pins her in the corner and does her.
Yeah, she kind of.
She wants it though.
She bends eventually as well, doesn't she? So it's just like that kind of awkwardness. If you've been there and you haven't got too much experience in that, I guess. I mean, I've sort of been in a situation as well, going to boyfriend's house, 16, 17 or whatever, and it's all a bit awkward, and it's very much kind of like a teenage kind of romance almost. But you've got 2 people who.
Did you find Stallone a sensitive lover? Or was it not exactly the same situation?
Well, it's a similar sort of thing, but I think it's more. Obviously, because he's from that kind of sort of tough background, and she's just really shy. But instead of having teenagers, it's got 2 kind of 30-somethings from.
Well, it's Arrested Development,
the opposite end of the tracks, really.
Chris has said how naive and childlike he is. You've just said definitely. Similar situation at 16 or 17. She's 30.
Well,
They're
exactly.
both
This is
well
it.
behind the curve in terms of life development.
Yeah, where they should be for sure.
So I think it kind of plays okay. I mean, I did watching this the other night. I did feel a little bit okay. This is a little bit.
He's pushing this a bit too much.
I was thinking maybe at the time and the characters that they are, I'll be watching it through different lenses. I guess I think it plays well. It plays okay enough because you kind of know the characters. You know Rocky's not malicious. You know what he's trying to do, and
If she'd have really insisted, we do believe he'd stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that there's no allegations of it's not completely one-sided. She does bend to him sort of thing because she wants to.
Yeah, it's like he has to kind of keep making the move. He has to keep sort of pushing things forward to get.
It's going to happen sooner or later.
Kind of because she is that sort of
I actually think quite the opposite, Becca. I think in his head, if it doesn't happen now, he's never going to get her out of the house again.
No, that's it.
She's been nervous all night. He hasn't got her to relax at all. He's tried to get her to sit down. And whilst you could look at that scene of, he wanted to make a pass at her, you could also read that entirely as he was trying to get her to relax. And she wasn't. She wants to go home. And I just think he's thinking, if not now, this probably won't ever happen again.
No, never going to escape. But no, you can see later on, I think, because you obviously get the idea that she's painfully shy. Then obviously you find out that she's obviously being sort of physically and verbally and emotionally abused by Paulie.
She might well be being physically abused. She might well be.
Well, but as kind of running theme is if he's not late, if he's late 10 minutes, going to hospital sort of thing. And every kind of scene, you kind of see him having a nip from a bottle or something that he's got stashed away in his pocket. I mean, he sort of drinks.
He's probably lashed out at her at times.
Well, no,
the
this
film
is
doesn't
exactly.
go there because we have to tolerate Paulie.
No, because it's all about Rocky, and we need a separate story for that. But you kind of get to understand why. But yeah, I must say this sort of first romantic scene between them after the ice skating sequence. It's one I found a bit difficult to watch.
Yeah.
Just because it was a little bit awkward.
The film goes really Hollywood for a minute as well because he shags her fit. How many films
He
has that
literally
happened
does.
in?
He literally does.
In the next scene, she's like glasses off and a woman.
He's got this amazing
it's
like,
like,
coat and hairdo and everything.
All she needs was a good boning, and now, like,
I know,
now she's got all the confidence.
And the hair just suddenly, untousled and, her
He's
eyesight
cheekbones and
improved.
everything, and it's just like literally a physical transformation all by a quick.
So yeah, if you're lacking confidence, ladies,
We'll just phone him up. Hello.
yeah, it's got to be around now. He's invited to the promoter's office.
Yeah, because like he gets
He
basically
goes in to see Mickey. This is where he gets chewed out by Mickey. He goes into the office. It's at the start of this episode, actually, folks. He goes in to see Mickey, and Mickey says, "There were some people here for you. They want sparring partners for Creed." And Rocky says, "Oh, you put me on. They must want sparring partners for Creed." It's like, I just said that, you dumb bacon. And that's where he really lets go as to why. And it's great because it's a nice... If you think structurally, the very next scene is going to be he's offered a way out of this life. So the very last scene before that, Mickey's telling him exactly where he's gone wrong with his life. Perfect, really.
And so where do we go from here? Sorry, I don't know. Don't remember the next scene.
Apologies, listeners, if we do get this wrong, because we are going from memory, even though we watched it from today. But it's actually a surprisingly simple and dense film in one go.
Yeah.
There's quite scenes in this. Piecing it together is more difficult than you would think, even though the story's quite slight in its way. I think he goes to the promoter's office. He's called in. He sits down. He's treated very nicely, and he's starts talking about how he'd be a good sparring partner, no cheap shots, everything else.
And actually, he's given the proposition to actually, no, why don't you? I'm going to give you the chance to fight the heavyweight champion of the world. And he goes, no.
I fight in clubs. I'm, a ham and egg. First time I
That
had
guy, he calls himself, isn't it?
my ham and egger. He says,
Ham and Egger, that's the one.
it's such a good fight.
So like,
So
so his initial action is no, I don't want to be embarrassed in front of TV. Thanks.
more or less, yeah. And it's almost like he says yes as a favour. It's almost like he says yes because he's too embarrassed to say no. When he rants at Mickey later and he's saying, I'm going to get my face smashed in, that's what he really thinks. This is just an awful idea. But he's got to take it. He's offered $150,000, which at today's money is about $650,000. I did look that up before the film, so not quite as high as I thought it was going to go, but it was certainly a bigger payday than he will have ever seen.
Still quite considerable.
Yeah, absolutely. And probably not out of order for what you'd expect a no-name challenger to get. And he says yes, because the very next scene you see them watching his press conference, which is really endearing. Because he goes,
Yeah, that's lovely, isn't it?
It's me, Rocky. It's like, yeah. And the other thing I love is the extraneous detail. This is brilliant writing because he says, so the Italian Stallion, where did you get that name from? And he says, it's something I thought up while I was eating dinner. The most irrelevant detail. It's just...
Oh, no, that made me laugh, actually. I was like, oh, okay, this is where we're going to find out where it name. Oh, I came up with it while eating dinner. Oh.
While I was eating dinner.
It's like it's like I don't know. Apollo's a good guy, and he's just like most downtrodden like opponent. Thinking this guy's gonna get destroyed. Imagine like tuning in the TV now.
Yeah, wasn't it late? Yeah, I don't know if it's there or later because he said, "Have you got anything derogatory to say about him?" And he says, "Oh, derogatory. Yeah, he's great." So totally in awe, and he sat there with. It's quite surreal. He sat there in like a row house, a terraced house, just watching himself on a little black and white telly announcing he's fighting for the world heavyweight title. It's really quite cool.
Yeah, it's a very interesting scene, I think.
And then I think we get to the infamous egg drinking.
Yeah, I think we get obviously Mickey turning up and just basically saying,
That's a little
"I wanna
later
manage
on.
you,"
He starts off training by himself. So he gets up in the morning, and there's something about the way this film is shot that I can almost feel the cold. I can almost feel what it's like when you get up really early in the morning and you're not quite awake.
No, you can see it in his face, can't you? Also, when he sort of leaves the house and you can see like his breath like in front of him. No, it does feel like it's 4 o'clock on the Monday morning. I'm freezing.
The morning newspapers are being unloaded from the van.
Yeah,
and stuff
I told
like
you how
that.
early it is.
Well, I remember when I think it was Run Fat Boy Run where Simon Pegg repeated this thing of drinking the eggs, and he said,
Oh yeah, it's gross. Oh,
he said it's like drinking snot.
it was all slimy, isn't it? Ugh.
And Sylvester Stallone used to do this for real until he read that it was really unhealthy.
Yeah, we probably shouldn't do it. We can't really offer any dietary advice, but it looks gross. So
But just, I know he's got Adrian now, but it's just how lonely it is, and I imagine it is for a lot of like sportsmen. Where you train
there's a
by
lot of times
yourself,
where we see him on his own, isn't he? Pretty much
running on his own.
Yeah.
And all of this was done. This is one of the places the film is cheap. They grabbed this footage wherever they could. They didn't have the permits. They didn't have the money that they needed. So they just hitch up in a van, and Sylvester Stallone would jump out and they'd film him running for a bit.
That's probably why they do it kind of like on the open street, because they probably wouldn't have had the time or the funds to be able to block off, sections of the road from traffic.
Absolutely. And where he runs up the stairs at the end and he's struggling, obviously I've said earlier they film the later bit where it's all triumphant about an hour later. But that was pioneering. They may even invented the Steadicam for this. Yeah, I think
it looks totally different, doesn't it? I think it's
the Steadicam work in this was groundbreaking to track him up the stairs like that, the steps.
Oh wow! So
I've actually been up those steps. I think if you go to Philadelphia, you have to go to the Museum of Art and go up those steps and do that pose, regardless.
What Becca isn't telling you is Apollo Creed knocked her out in round 3.
No.
She's still got a few good shots in, to be fair.
And be like, well, I've not seen the film, but everyone was like, oh yeah, go on, up you go. So we all had a go, and I'll try and dig it out. I've got it somewhere.
So yeah, training's going okay. Apollo
it's pretty epic training, isn't it? I mean, he kind of has this unusual habit of obviously Paulie owns a sort of meat packing kind of thing, refrigerator. And he ends
That's another thing Joe Frazier claims he invented in his autobiography. Joe Frazier said they got that from me. I used to do that. Mm-hmm. Paulie works in sort of a meat packing plant. We'll see more of that next week, and in Rocky Balboa. And Rocky goes in there and he's pissed off at Paulie, and he kind of hits the ribs to avoid hitting Paulie. He's pissed off because Paulie's going, "Are you balling my sister?" Which is just like every time Paulie's given the benefit of the doubt, he opens his mouth. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then Paulie uses that as an excuse to call in the press because he thinks he can make some money out of it. That's a real reporter they got in to do that interview later on with him.
Yeah, from local TV.
Yes, Sly just said, there's something about reporters that when it's acted, you can just tell it's not sincere. He just said, you're better off getting a real reporter. And they filmed him sort of working on that. And you've got Duke, who you'll see right the way through the series, Apollo's trainer, watching it. And he's just he's looking at this guy absolutely smashing the shit out of ribs and just going, I don't like the look of this guy. He's a southpaw as well, so he didn't want him to take it. And Creed's not interested. He's asking for more coffee and looking at endorsements.
Which kind of tells you everything you need to know about the situation there, isn't it, really? It's like, he's the guy who actually knows about boxing, whose job is to know about boxing. And Creed's really not interested. He's like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I'm mean too.
Yeah.
Or I mean business too, I think he just says as a line, really. Mickey comes along and tells us to his apartment and, first off, he tells him to lay off the women. But I think that's a later scene, actually.
Yeah, I think it's when they're training, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. He tells him to lay off women, weaken legs. I've never forgotten that. Yeah. That's true, because I've slept with some women and I can't run for shit. So it must be true, right?
I normally could barely walking away from the bed. I'm like, shit.
There you go. Women are dodgy. Anyway, so... the scene where Mickey goes to see him now, I've always got mixed feelings about Mickey in this film.
Because it completely seems like he's just jumping on opportunities. Like, oh, now you're interested. Now I've got to now I'm fighting the champ, kind of thing.
He calls it out. It's just like, well, where were you when I needed you about 6 years ago?
Yeah.
And he's talking that he needs a manager, which is asked about face. He doesn't. He needs a trainer. You don't need a manager once the deal's done. So, but he plays the scene nice. Burgess Meredith. He does humble very well here. For a guy who's cantankerous through most of his time in these films, he does play apologetic quite well.
I think they just have at it, don't they? Just like have like they speak their piece and just let things go, and and he leaves, and Rocky has like his think to himself. Right. He kind of like has a little sort of just this kind of like that thing where he shouts at no one. And then
the apartment stinks. He's going to get his face caved in, all that kind of stuff.
And then he just runs after him, and I expect they have like a massive hug and a kiss when in that landscape shot. I don't think you can
adequately easily write what they would say to each other, so it's better we never find out.
Yeah.
Rocky's run after him, apologised and said, "Yeah, I'll work with you," but I don't think you can write that as well as just the image of him catching up with an old man, a little bit hunched, walking down the street quite slowly on a cold evening. And then I think we get into training montages and stuff. Oh, no, it's not montages straight away, is it? It's the bit about his footwork. He's told to lay off the women, and he gets a bit of rope string tied around his legs to keep his balance right. It's funny in next week because he trains for ages on all these techniques that go right out the fucking window the moment he starts fighting.
He doesn't use any of them.
Well, he does, in that next week, the only thing I'll give away is he's a southpaw, and next week he's told to fight orthodox for a bit, which he does. He fights orthodox through most of the fight, but the reasoning behind it is not really evidenced in what we see of the fight, put it that way. Yeah, so he's told to lay off Adrian. He can still see her, but he's not sleeping with her. What else? Where do we go from there?
The TV, it's at the interview.
That's probably the interview next, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he goes on TV and Apollo sees it, and he's kind of in that middle of that scene where he's like, "Oh, I want so many millions spent on, I don't know, Canadian advertising, and I want 600 red roses sent to the mayor and make sure everybody knows about it."
Yeah. Send some to his wife as well, you know.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, send to the mayor's wife, not to the mayor. Well, it's the city of brotherly love, but you never know.
I don't think that's quite what they meant.
No, I don't think it is either.
Yeah, so we don't see an awful lot of Apollo training at all, if any. And we see a lot of Rocky training okay. But we do get... It's fairly linear in this film. I mean, in future weeks, they throw all sorts of obstacles in the way that hampers his training and stuff. This week, he goes straight to work and he works well, and we do get the earliest montages of, you know, his running's getting better, his press-ups are getting better, his sparring, and
someone shouts, "So you're looking good, Rock," and he gives like the okay.
Yeah.
And we do get the sort of the repeat of the running up the steps as well. You know,
but he does it well this time.
Yeah, he doesn't look knackered when he's done it.
Which he should be, because he just did it badly an hour before. But all those sequences, like a long sequence of him running along the sort of dockside, and that was everyone always thinks that's speeded up, and I did too, and apparently it isn't. But also, it was right, no one's looking, jump out and do it now, and we'll drive alongside. All of this stuff is really just grabbed as and when they can, which I really, really love.
Yeah, I mean, you can't tell anyway, can you? It doesn't sort of...
No, not
affect
at all.
The film at all.
You sort of can if you know.
Yeah.
But even then, it's not like it's really amateurish. You can really tell when we get to the fight. But again, I know what I'm looking for now. And of course, I've seen all the follow-ups, which are bigger budget, and they're doing it in proper arenas with big crowds of extras and stuff. I think the key scene we get next is we get a sequence where Adrian is with him in his room, and he basically says he can't win.
I think what happened there, I think there's a scene where he goes, it's the night before, and he goes to the ring, and he kind of sees like a big picture of himself, and he points out the colour of the trunks are wrong, and it's like... Yeah,
that's another thing. That was, sorry to interrupt, that was ad-libbed because they made a mistake and didn't have the money to put it right.
Oh, so really?
They just went in, and it was like, well, we'll have him point it out, and we'll have the guy say, well, it doesn't really matter, does it?
And that kind of like, I think, because for me, when that scene kind of sparks off into the next scene, it kind of like feels, it's kind of like him knocking his confidence a little bit, saying like, well, no one's expecting you to win this, or
well, it's two things, isn't it? Firstly, he's almost an irrelevance. that, like you say, it's just, well, but secondly, it was like something about this isn't right. He's gone into this arena. He's never fought in anywhere that big. And he's looking up at this thing, and even that's not right. Why am I even doing this? It's not right.
Yeah, I guess there's that, but I kind of read it as like it was also an opportunity when the way he looks at the thing for one last time or before the scene ends. It's kind of like a sense of like, I'll fucking prove them wrong. They are gonna underestimate me. There's this little sort of sense of like a fire building up, and he goes back to Adrian and says, "I can't win. I can't beat him." You know, he knows he's out of his depth, as you would think, but he kind of like does it in a kind of weird way. But I'm gonna go the distance though, because I've never gone
Well,
distance.
apparently, not long before the Ali fight, Wepner is reported to have said something very similar to his wife. It wasn't literally the same. I think it was something along the lines of, I can't beat him, but I just want to prove I belong in there. Which, yeah. Now, of course, he didn't quite go the distance. He was only seconds away. But obviously, with this being a drama, you can write it that Rocky does. So that becomes the big goal. Well, yeah, that kind of makes sense. He's a club fighter with 20 defeats. We find out when he's on the way to the ring and the commentators are talking that he's had 20 defeats. He's a club fighter. There's absolutely no way he belongs in there. So, yeah, you wouldn't go in. I mean, you've always got a puncher's chance. But there's really no way he can expect to even land a bloody punch, let alone win this thing. So I actually really like that scene. I think it's kind of, well, and it gives him a rationale for doing it, because it wouldn't fit in the film that he's like, well, it's a good payday, I might as well take it, because that's just totally against the heart of the film. If he thought he was going to win, we'd probably think he was deluded. And if he was genuinely like, I'm going to go in there and get my ass handed to me inside 2 rounds, you'd think, well, why do it then? What are your goals? Where's your self-respect? You are going to be embarrassed. What he actually outlines is that he's got something he can shoot for that might be possible.
I think it's just like with the willingness to like finally say, no, I actually want to achieve something. I'm sick of being a bum. I want to actually finish something. Even if he gets his face bad, he's like, I just want to still be standing. I just want to achieve something. I want to go the distance. I want to finish this thing.
There's drop dialogue here where Creed says that he's going to finish him in 3.
Yeah.
And you think, well, as an exhibition goes, that's about long enough for people to think they've got their money. You haven't taken any risks. You haven't massively expended yourself by going into later rounds. Yeah, just toy with him for a couple of rounds, then put him away. So that would probably be quite realistic as to what might happen in this scenario.
And then we get to the fight, and we have like kind of oddly like both in the same locker room, like Creed's there like doing his with his fists.
They're not in the same locker room.
Are they not? I'm sure they were. I thought they were like
cross-cut. No, it just cross-cuts between the two. Because while he's in front of the mirror building up a sweat and doing his punches, and he does look mean there, Rocky's like praying and stuff like that. It's a different locker room.
Okay. My mistake.
I mean, it might be the same one filmed at different times, but it's not meant to be that they're in the same room at the same time.
It was probably my memory, because I think I remember like seeing like Creed close up and Rocky in the background, but never mind.
This actually feels quite serious by now, though, because Creed looks pretty mean during this stuff.
Yeah.
He's built up a sweat. He's pretty ripped anyway, and they're clearing his nostrils and making and he's he's throwing these quite short, mean punches, shadow boxing, and suddenly it's like, yeah, he's probably out of his depth here, and he's wearing this awful robe with the meat fucking plant thing on it. Which I love, because he says, he said he'd done it for $3,000. He said, what do you get? And it's like the robe, and it's like shrewd. Anything for a friend.
And you got Apollo dressed as like George Washington.
Yeah, I love all this. What did you make of all this, Becca?
I think it's brilliant. I think it really encapsulates how much of a showman Creed is, pretty much, because he's coming up here in all his kind of finery, his wig, and I think as he kind of goes on, he looks like a giant flag, Rocky says. And he does look like a massive flag.
Yeah, when he gets in the ring, he's sort of Uncle Sam on the way in.
There's George Washington literally on his horse, all the girls around him, big glittery glittery cape as well. I think it just completely contrasts the two fighters coming from separate ends of the track.
Magically hides their lack of money because they only had a few dozen extras here.
It's shot really cleverly in such a way that you wouldn't even know.
Yeah, they move them around for various scenes, so the ring entrances and that. When you get mass shots of a mass crowd cheering, the film's of a slightly different quality. It's stock footage. That is from the second Ali Frazier fight from early 1974 at Madison Square Garden. So Rocky Sly says on the commentary, he's like, it doesn't even match up. Not only is it a different match, but it's a different shape and look of arena and everything. But it works. They do the best they can. But the thing that shocks you when you get to the later films and come back and watch this is the fight's not very long. The fight sequence as a part of the fight isn't that long.
Well, I think they vary, don't they? But yeah, they do tend to sort of like go distance, really, don't they, in the fight sequences? But yeah, I know. I mean, I think it goes on for as long as it should do. It doesn't hang around that it's boring, but it's really sort of well executed.
Rocky 2, I haven't timed them, but Rocky 2 has a longer fight than this.
Oh, definitely. It's more sensational fight as well.
Yeah.
But this one, I think, kind of like it plays it really well. I mean, for its budget, it does a good job of keeping it kind of like fairly authentic, you know.
Yeah, it really does. You've got the cameo from Joe Frazier. You've got the announcers. We see them in most of the early films. Stu Nahan. Who else have we got? We've got the. You see how much Razzmatazz has changed since then. Because basically the microphone comes down and he says, in this corner, and just names him. Yeah. None of this, let's get ready to rumble and, 5 million different nicknames and stuff. It's halfway between sort of old style and present day. You can sort of see that there's a few decades on this. But I really like it because they come out to fight. And again, Apollo's just trying to make a nice little exhibition of it. It's a little bit like the start of his fight with Drago, actually. It's just a bit of a show to start with. And then Rocky fucking decks him with his first punch.
There's very much of a kind of different style between the two men's fights, isn't it? Because Creed is like, come on, give the guys a show. Whereas Rocky is he's very. There's what I want to say about. Yeah, there's kind of a phrase I wanted to use, but I kind of was going to try and use more gender neutral way of saying it. But no, yeah, I think that's pretty much how you say it, Dave. But it's pretty much literally.
Yeah.
It just works him. It's kind of more about stamina, isn't it, really?
Endurance, yeah.
Endurance,
how much punishment he can take.
Yeah.
But again, he's not... That punch, just everything in the language of this, the one thing Avildsen really gave to this film, because it's almost co-directed by Sylvester Stallone, an awful lot of this is his ideas and how he wanted it done. But the amount of work they put into the fights was Avildsen. He filmed hours and hours of them practicing all this. And Rocky's punch is kind of just, not literally, but it's kind of like a punt, isn't it? It's just kind of he just throws this massive haymaker hoping for the best. I mean, I think he's as shocked as anyone it connects, much as knocks him down, because the first half a minute of the fight or minute of the fight or whatever it's been, he can't land a punch because the guy's too quick for him. And everything Apollo throws, albeit not that hard at this stage, is hitting him. So already he's a bit frustrated. So he's like, well, I'll just fucking throw something. And it just totally changes the flow of the fight.
Yeah, because also it's like, shit. I mean, bear in mind, like, Apollo's never been knocked down before, has he?
No.
So this is like, okay, this guy's just kind of embarrassed me. It's kind of like Ali. This guy's kind of like embarrassed me in front of everyone now. Now I have to kind of like prove myself and prove that, well, it was just a lucky punch, So the only time it's going to happen, it was a lucky, caught me unawares, a lucky punch. Now I've got to finish it to kind of prove to everyone that, that I'm still champ, essentially. And yet he kind of like, it's a smart move because it really makes like, it really turns the heat on in the fight now, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think it is the very first round he finishes breaking his nose.
Well, Apollo breaks his nose.
Apollo breaks Rocky's nose.
Ah, that's a nice.
Because he finishes the fight, and you just see shock on Stallone's face, and he's like, "Oh my god!" And he feels around his nose, and he goes back to the corner, and he's like, "I think I broke my nose," and it's like it's an improvement. and then we just skip through rounds quite quickly. We're at round 14 before you know it, and Rocky's still there. He's been put down a fair few times.
We spoke before about Creed not going the distance. I mean, he says, doesn't he mention something about going sort of 12, 13 rounds, and that this fight lasts, was it 15, I think?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
They were championship lengths in that era. Largely, I mean, it varied by governing bodies, but I think all the governing bodies were 12 rounds by about 87, something like that. But yeah, a championship fight in the 70s would have been 15 rounds. So yeah, he's never gone that far, but Rocky won't have either, because they won't have club fighters doing 15 rounds. So it sort of, and don't forget, a few weeks before he was smoking heavily. So, neither of them are at their absolute, are absolutely honed athletes in this fight. But the music really swells around here. He puts Rocky down with some of the music we'll hear again next week when he trains for the rematch. Some of literally the same music. And Mickey's just begging him to stay down. And I love that. And that's just as Adrian comes into the arena, because she was sat in the dressing room.
Yeah.
And she just closes her eyes almost as if it will go away. I like all this.
Yeah, she pretty much does that for the entire of the series, really. But
she's not well served as the series goes on. Right, moaning Minnie she is.
But yeah, it's stereotypical of like sort of stay down, like why keep hurting yourself? But but
you're beaten, yeah.
But Rocky's determined. He's like, no, I came here to finish this thing. I want to remain standing, and he gets up and keeps on fighting him. He does some damage to Apollo as well. He sort of.
Well, first off, the look on Carl Weathers' face.
Yeah.
Because he's got his arms in the air. He's celebrating a win. Because I think if you knock people out for a living, you tend to quite often know whether the punch has done the job. I think he's like, I've won this. And he just looks around, and it's just that moment where he's like, he can't believe it, and Rocky's calling him in.
Yeah.
Did you spot the little trick here?
Which one? Sorry.
Rocky lands 4 punches here, doesn't he?
Yeah.
It's the same 2 punches twice.
So they're reusing film.
Ah.
Yeah, it's just 2 different cameras on the same piece of footage.
Yeah, it's just from a different angle, isn't it?
Yeah. He punches him twice. That's it. And they repeated it and scored the music to it perfectly. And he's broken Creed's ribs.
No, it's a very clever way of doing it. I mean, this film, it doesn't. I think earlier when you said it looks cheap, I know that's not what you meant. But you can tell there are a lot of ways they've cut corners to save budget, because it has been done on a shoestring. But I think it also shows very intelligent filmmaking. You've got a very limited budget. Yeah. I mean, look at Superman 4, for example. There are lots of things they could have done, which are very, very obvious.
Well, this
but
one,
I think
best editing,
here they've obviously done it very cleverly. It's a very intelligent, expedient filmmaking.
Yeah, I mean, it won best editing. So
exactly,
the way
this
they
is why.
cut it to the music and tricks like this.
Yeah.
And it makes the last round really tense, because he's broken his ribs right at the end of the round.
It does.
Don't ever make the mistake of timing the last round when you watch it, because that's not a 3-minute round, I promise you.
That's movie magic there for you. No, but it's like you see all the gruesome stuff, like the swelling of the eyes, and you have to kind of literally slit them open so they can actually see.
Ooh.
And yeah, so it's
I winced at that. I was just like, oh.
The makeup for this film, and he's on the special features, was done by Michael Westmore. Michael Westmore, who did the Star Trek makeup. He did all the Klingons and that.
Yeah, I must say the costumes and makeup are really of high quality. This one, they're really lifelike, really believable.
Yeah.
Just fantastic. Really enjoy to watch.
So yeah, they cut his eye to keep it open, or to open it up, because it's full of swelling. You can't tell any difference. They've done it again. Michael Westmore shows the little tool they used. It's got like a hidden blood capsule in it that you squeeze as you sort of move it across the eye. It's really well done. But the final round's great, because it's all Rocky. It's got a completely different cadence to the final round in the second fight, because in the second fight they're kind of out on their feet.
Yeah.
Here, this is much more like Creed, actually.
Yeah, they just punch.
He's got him. It's almost like 10 more seconds and he'd have had him.
Yeah. I think it would have been difficult if you would have broken it. In fairness, if with broken ribs you would struggle to fight, really.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, and then the bell rings, and then that's just it. Everyone's like surprised that Rocky actually put up a fight. He was like, he didn't go down in the first few rounds. He's almost like won over the crowd, not for the first time in the series. And what's kind of endearing is the fact that as soon as he won the first thing he does when he wins the match, he just calls out for Adrian. That's all. It's always bothered about all these people there trying to
results to aside. The first thing we hear before the music kicks in is you hear Apollo say, "Ain't gonna be no rematch," and he says, "Don't want one." And just the way he delivers that is just he's exhausted. It just comes out as "Don't want one." It's just really, really great. And then the music kicks in, and they've got a microphone under him, and he's just screaming Adrian's name.
Yeah.
And the result, we're hearing it. If you pay attention, it's a split decision, which makes no sense because Rocky's had his ass handed to him for the entire fight, really. But adds a bit of drama, I guess.
But what last few rounds though? It's like
I don't know. We missed some of the rounds, I guess. But and Adrian gets in the ring, and it's all "I love you" and all that shit.
Yeah, all that shit.
And then the end.
That poster where they were, where you see them walking away. That's how the film was meant to end. I think they even shot that to start with. They were going to walk out of the ring together, or he was going to walk out to her, and they were going to walk out of the arena together.
Would it would end it on a freeze frame, and it kind of like you see the poster kind of go in black and white, and then the credits.
Possibly, yeah, possibly.
Yeah, but they do the similar thing though, don't they? In the next film, I'm pretty sure.
The second one, no, it's not quite. It's not quite. You do get Rocky walking out of the ring in a later fight.
No, but the freeze frame thing with I think it just goes into
phrases with him. The next one freeze frames with him hugging Mickey.
Yeah. And
then it goes to like a drawing or a silhouette effective. Yeah, I saw that one first, which we'll get to that next week.
And there we are. That's Rocky.
It's a very simple and complex film in one go. Because the story this isn't a particularly long episode, and it's not. It doesn't take that long to get through the main beats of the plot. But when you're trying to stitch together the way the different scenes were cut together, it is quite masterfully written and edited.
And in terms of like the structure, it's very simple, kind of like 3-act kind of structure in terms of the way it's told. But it's kind of very, there's a lot of character and plot points there that kind of have to be adhered to, and you have to pick up on. Especially how in the sort of the technical elements of how it's put together as well. It's when you actually get to the nitty gritty of it, you can spend quite a lot of time picking it apart and looking into it and find lots of expert analysis like we do, folks.
So was it like what you expected, Becca? Was it kind of? Do you see it as a American classic, or do you kind of think?
I do. It's kind of I'd say going in, I'm not quite sure what I expected. I think I expected more kind of a sports film, just literally fighting. I sort of didn't realise it was going to be so much of a sort of human sort of rags to riches like Cinderella story. I came out thinking it was better than what I expected. Not that I thought it was going to be rubbish, but just literally, kind of exceeded what I think was going to happen there. But no, yeah, definitely, I'm really glad I've seen it. I don't know why it's taking me so long. I just haven't got around to it. So.
Oh, don't worry about it.
Sly.
There's tons of films I've not seen. So
no, that's it. It's just definitely just one of those things. But no, I'm glad to get this ball rolling, and I'm really glad I've kind of ticked that off my list now. I look forward to moving on to the sequels, despite whatever maybe you hear about them.
And did you manage to tune into Stallone's speech without the subtitles?
Yeah,
I did say because she told me quite early in the film. Because she said, "Oh, I'm watching it now," and a few minutes later, I said, "How are you getting on with it?" And she said, "I've got to have the subtitles on." And I said, "You will tune into it." And
I will. I'm very sad that this isn't like a personal thing to Stallone. It's literally, obviously, I've seen some other of his films where I can understand perfectly what he says.
Well, he's playing a character.
I think it's just because of it's just because of the sound of it, and also because of me personally and the way my kind of brain operates. Sometimes if somebody has like a really, really thick accent or a certain way of speaking.
Well, I suspect...
And also I think I'm going a little bit deaf as well, so apologies for that. There's nothing against Stallone or whatever, and I know he does not have that reputation.
With the Queen and Samuel L. Jackson and Riddick Bowe.
No, that's it. But also I know I don't speak very well, and I know that I don't enunciate perhaps as well as I could. Apologies for that, but I just kind of... I need to have the subtitles on this.
To be honest, I would imagine the first version of this film would probably have been mono anyway. Yeah. So it's probably been remixed into something else. So it's not the best clarity you get.
stereo.
And he's playing a character who's been, punched in the head, in 64
Yeah,
fights.
definitely. That is
The
what
guy
it is,
is meant to be a little bit punchy.
Yeah.
So,
fair enough.
it's not the same as watching him in Demolition Man or something. It isn't. It's meant to be. I don't know that he would expect that it requires subtitles, but I don't think it's a shock that you found it difficult. You've never seen one of these as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's not, I don't think it's an insult at all.
No,
I
I'm
think,
just embarrassed to admit it.
it's not just him, though.
It's because sort of when my brain works as well, because sometimes I do, like if a character like a really thick accent generally, and plus I do think I'm going a little bit deaf. I was poorly recently, and it's to do with like my sort of hearing and balance and all the rest of it. And I do need to get a hearing test and all the rest of it as well. So I think that has something to do with it as well. Because there's some aspects of it where I did kind of struggle to understand what was going on. But I just find it helps to...
Sorry, say that again?
Yeah, exactly. What did you say? Pardon? Speak up, shouldn't you? But no, all in all, I really enjoyed it and looking forward to watching the rest of the films.
Dave, any closing thoughts?
I doubt there's anything I haven't said, really. I mean, funnily enough, I'll get to it next week. I saw Rocky 2 first. And whilst I would never say that's a better film, it just isn't. None of the sequels are. They all have things, even Rocky Balboa, which I loved at the time and still really enjoy. You can actually drive a coach and horses through that film. There's a lot wrong with it when you think about it. This is the most accomplished of the series. It's not necessarily my favourite, strangely, because it wasn't my first love in the series. But I think it's misleading because you don't always get out of life what you put in. Sometimes people take enormous risks to get nowhere. But it is wonderful to see a film made with no money, with a guy, comparatively, with a guy who had to fight tooth and nail to make the film, who made it for less money than they would have made it with a bigger name, who was sort of coming up on 30 and probably thought his window of opportunity was closing, to not only get his film made and get what he wanted made, but then have it turn into an Oscar-winning all-time classic, I think is a wonderful, wonderful story. And I think the film stands up extremely well.
I absolutely agree with you, Dave. I can't think I've put it any better than that. I mean, it's just a really nice, sweethearted film. It's got like a really, really big heart in what is kind of very sort of dark, grim, and kind of grimy kind of like setting, but ultimately it pays off like really, really nicely. And so any of the critics who say Stallone can't act, well, exhibit wrong, Rocky. There you are. The dude can pull on a performance. Yeah,
because I mean there are films where his speech pattern is very slightly different from Sylvester Stallone himself.
Yeah.
Rambo, certainly First Blood, would be a real example of that. But he's not like this in any other film. When people go to do a Sylvester Stallone impression, they actually do Rocky.
Yeah.
And he is not Rocky. He's playing a character here, and he's doing it exceptionally well.
It's like you just got to look at Rocky and Rambo and think, hang on, these are two completely different characters, and he plays them really well, believably, without any sort of like.
I think the thing is, Chris, he's gone on and done, right through the 80s. He became very action heavy. Even now, he's still doing stuff like The Expendables. There's some doubt on whether he's going to do 4, but yeah, certainly. He's still sort of, steroids and human growth hormones and look how much I can live. And I'm not slandering him there. Don't forget, he's not a professional sportsman. He's quite, he can take growth hormones if he wants, and he has done. I think, in some respects, when you look back at the press of the time, there was talk about him as like another Brando. And they were thinking about some of Brando's sort of earlier films that evoke some of this stuff evokes. I think had Brando done those films and then done nothing but mindless action for the next 20 years, then his reputation might have suffered accordingly. I don't necessarily think Sylvester Stallone's an amazing actor by any means, but I think here he is playing a role that he originated and that just came from the absolute bottom of his heart. And he throws everything into it and is absolutely outstanding. and you can go and watch some of his later action stuff and pigeonhole him as something that he is occasionally capable of transcending.
I just think, especially with the action stuff, he just tends to sort of like want to give the fans what they want. He does have sometimes when he does those films like the Expendables, like his whole attitude was like, yeah, but there's like an audience for this and people would actually really enjoy it, so why not try and do it, and why not try and give him a good time? Why not try and make him happy? And then I think there is a genuine kind of desire to just give people what they want. Make films to entertain.
It depends what you want out of life. The thing he had most investment in his entire life garnered him a Best Actor nomination, and it won Best Picture. So
it's hard to build up from that, isn't it?
Make what you like.
Yeah.
What are you going to say after that? Well, that's quite promising, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe his next film will cure cancer.
Yeah, he still should have won for Creed, though, shouldn't he? With the best supporting actor. But there you go.
It was kind of a photo finish between him and Ruffalo for me, but there you go.
But anyway, so have we got any fun facts, or are we?
Are we doing something else?
I've got a new item.
I mean, we're not having any fun or factage.
Well, I think this time around, Dave has actually revealed quite a few fun facts as we've gone along. So I think you've done more than I could ever do.
Fair enough.
So I thought we'd
that's
try.
Fun, folks.
That's fun,
Sorry,
folks.
I wasn't even aware I was having fun. It's nice retrospectively to find that was fun. Good.
Well, minus all the facts about people sadly passing away. That's not very fun.
I didn't spot any fruit, sadly.
There was very little fruit in this film.
Yeah.
No, he mentions coconuts and he mentions lemons, but that's it. You don't see so much fruit.
He might run past the fruit stall in the second one.
Okay,
we'll keep an eye open for it.
We got that.
Keep an eye open for it.
I think he does because he runs through the market in the second one. We'll keep an eye out for that.
No, I thought I'd try a new item.
Next week, Rocky's Fern Plums.
We need to get Sly on the show and see what he has.
Rocky's oranges.
Look at his plums.
His purple plums.
Well, it was cold.
Obviously, after going a few rounds of the Apollo Creed, I'm not surprised.
Oh.
But yeah, they say no below the belt, so maybe not.
All right,
No, I thought I'd try a new item in the shape of a little quiz. What I'll do is like 5 really easy questions. What you can do is I'll read them out, and for any listeners, if you're listening along, you can jot down your answers and send them in to us. Just for a bit of fun. You unfortunately won't win anything.
We're skin. Fuck off.
No, it's just a bit of fun, really.
All right.
Or if it takes off, we can maybe have points and then see who wins at the end of when we do the film series.
So Chris and I are not to answer these.
No, you could do if you want, maybe.
Well, it's no point on air, is it?
This is very new. We haven't worked out yet.
But the thing is, if I answer them on air, let's say I know them, because.
Oh no! Or we could do it. No, what we'll do is I'll read them out and then we'll find the answers next week. I'll read them out next week.
There's a plan.
There we are.
Right.
Okay.
We're just cobbling it together as we go.
Chris and I will indicate whether we think we know them then.
I think you will know them. They are very easy.
Okie dokie. Audience participation. That's what comedians do when they're artistically bankrupt. So welcome to the fag end. What do you expect us to talk, Becca?
Oh, I feel bad now. I think audience participation can be great.
Yeah.
So a couple of really easy questions, really.
Once I'm not in the audience, I don't give a shit.
Okay, so number 1. Rocky has 2 pet turtles. What are they called? Number 2. And what breed of dog is Butkus? Number 3. Big squishy one. Don't think I got a squish. Number 3. How many rounds does Apollo Creed think he can knock out Rocky? And how many rounds do you think it will take him to knock him out?
Spoiler alert, we might have mentioned that before.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's all right.
Just so you're paying attention, you know.
I would imagine people listening to this must tune out occasionally. We talk an awful lot of bollocks.
And plus, these are ridiculously easy questions. Question number 4. The poster of Rocky that we see at the end, what's wrong with it?
The poster of Rocky we see... Oh, right, I've got it.
Yep.
You mean in the arena?
When he goes to the arena first off
Okay,
and
yeah, fine.
has a chat with the promoter. He's like, oh, that picture up there, there's something wrong with it. What is it? And number 5...
My dick bulge is way bigger than that.
I'm facing the wrong way. And number 5...
Yeah, just a picture of him.
Facing backwards.
Awesome.
You see his bum. Oh.
Sorry, Oliver Reed.
Resting on a carpet. And question number 5, which American city is the film set in? Very, very easy questions there. So if you want to get in touch with your answers, listeners, you can drop us an email, expectustalk@gmail.com, or you can always put the answers on our Facebook page or tweet us. I'll read out those answers next week. Really stupidly easy. And we'll give this a go and see how it goes. And go from there.
Yeah.
We'll just literally fly by the seat of our pants.
Yeah. We'll have a name for this quiz next week, I reckon.
Fun quiz.
There you go. Fun quiz. Brilliant.
No, it won't be fun quiz. It'll be something else, I'm sure.
I have a name. Do you expect us to quiz?
Yeah, there we are.
Brilliant.
Dave's ecstatic by it.
Yeah.
Oh no, I was just trying to think of something else to do other than fun facts, because it's just like, let's try something else now.
Yeah. We're keeping it fresh.
That's quiz, folks.
That's quiz, folks. Getting quizzical.
That's a piece of piss, folks.
No, I'm inspired by a quiz that I took at the weekend, which was ridiculously hard, and somehow I won. But there we are.
Show off.
I was going to say.
It was really, really hard. Oh, literally, I think some of them I guessed, and somehow I won. I was like, oh, what the...
So,
yeah, Becca's one of his modest winners, where she goes like, "Well, I don't know, I don't really know, but I just took a shot in the dark, and I guess I just landed on precisely the right answer."
Turned out that was the cure for Parkinson's. Yeah, okay.
But so that was the cure for cancer.
So, in all honesty,
which was
then,
nice.
Becca's new segment was inspired by her weekend awesomeness.
No, I just thought I'd try and do something really, really just a bit of fun. Questions may get progressively harder. We shall see.
Well, let's hope so, because
that was very, very easy. I know.
I think a couple of people might trip over the breed of dog, but I think we mentioned almost everything else.
Yeah, we did pretty much, just to make sure if you're paying attention and if you've seen the film.
Right.
So I know sometimes a lot of people don't always watch along unless we're doing a commentary. Watch along with us as such.
Or you can just Google it. I'm pretty
Just
sure.
Google it, literally. Just Google Rocky Dog, Rocky Turtles, and all the rest of it. But yeah.
If you're going to Google it, be very careful how you spell butt kiss.
Yeah, sorry if I pronounced that oddly, but there it is.
No, I think that's how it's pronounced, but it's spelled butt cuss, isn't it? Butkus, I think it is.
That's the one.
There you go. That's fun, folks.
That's fun quiz.
That's quiz, folks.
That's quiz. That's quiz, folks.
Yeah, I don't think that's lazy and derivative, folks.
That's all, no. Well, you know, we've got a street.
That'll do, folks.
That'll do.
Yeah.
Alternatively, if you have other ideas of items that we can have, let us know.
Yeah. Can you come up with something inspired and groundbreaking as that was?
I'd like to see you try.
Yes.
That's filler, folks. There you are.
That's good.
Yeah, we've got to bullshit a bit between stopping talking about the film and saying goodbye.
Oh dear.
So, did you see the bear game? Bears game?
How about that local sports team, eh?
Oh dear.
What's good on TV this week?
Well, I think that was successful banter. We might make that a regular section of the show.
Successful banter.
Yes.
That could be another item on the show.
Successful banter with Becca Andrews. Yeah, to be fair, I mean, Chris, you came up with fun facts. I kind of backed into them, really, but fair enough. Chris was it had kind of fruit corner imposed on him, but you know, I've come up with nothing, to be fair, so I
I was
shouldn't
going
not.
to say, you haven't done any items, so come on.
I came up with our name. I've been living on that for 18 months. Let me go.
We'll let you off. It's all right.
Social media, folks.
So,
Social-
yeah, you can follow me at Cinematronics on Twitter. You can also find this podcast as well as the Cinematronics podcast featuring Dave on the latest episode, where we just talk for about 3 hours nearly. You can find out at cinematronics.co.uk.
You can find me at the Pasty Kid 1976. It's also worth mentioning all three of us have been on various episodes of Smorgasbord. You can get that at Smorgasbord on Twitter. Smorgasbord spelled board, B-O-R-E-D. So we've been on, I think Chris has been on 3 or 4 episodes. I've been on a few. Becca made her debut last week.
And apparently it's hilarious, so I'm told.
The episode's funny. It was all Sunday sport headlines, which is it was quite funny. Becca's idea of what constitutes a Sunday sport headline was quite funny. I mean, her first
Having
answer
not read it before.
that was like, "Yeah, she's never seen the Sunday sport. I'm convinced of it." So she was a bit shocked by my first answer.
I try to avoid red tops if I can avoid, if I can help it.
Well, these aren't serious news items. But
No, I know.
If you want to learn what goes on day 1 of ISIS membership, tune in. You only get half an hour to grow a beard, apparently. Anyway, that's it from me. Becca, what about you and the show?
Yes, if you want to follow us on Twitter, we are at Expected to Talk. You can drop us an email, expectustotalk@gmail.com. We're also on facebook.com/expectustotalk. And also, if you go into YouTube and type in Expected to Talk, we are also on there, all our latest episodes and fun. And that is it. That's where you can find us on the interwebs.
Our episodes and fun. They don't come in the same package.
No, some are fun, some are episodes. That's it. They're separate. There were all kinds of other fun there as well. I think some of your other Cinematronic episodes are on there too.
I haven't put the Cinematronics episodes on there, actually, YouTube.
Uh-huh.
So, and I can't be asked.
No. Oh.
And I
Even
can't,
it's not my fucking podcast.
and I can't be I can't be asked either. So yeah, there you are. It's
Doesn't want listeners. That's so last year.
Like the business end of it.
All right. So I would imagine the Rocky saga finishes here. So I can't guess what we're doing next, Becca.
And at the end, how Apollo Creed was like, "There will be no rematch."
Yeah, I'd say
You were wrong.
What?
You were wrong.
Lying bastard. I bet he cheats on his wife as well, the bastard.
Da da da. No, I'm very much looking forward to this.
Sorry, there's some kid. Sorry.
Anyway, yes, there will be a rematch because Do You Expect to Talk will return with Rocky 2.